What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. The Lightblade has returned as this week's Nightfall, and with it we get the first week of Grandmasters, along with the return of the Wendigo Adept Grenade Launcher. And let me tell you folks, this Grandmaster is a doozy. After spending hours in this strike last night, I think it's safe to say that this will be the one Grandmaster Nightfall that gives Guardians the most issues this season. While the mechanics all play out the same as they have since the Lightblade released, this strike on Grandmaster this season feels far less forgiving than it ever has been. The Lucent Hive are an absolute menace in this strike, and there's a lot of them, including 3 in the first encounter once entering Oryx's temple. Their suppression grenades are a one-hit kill, and their frisbees flat out defy the natural laws of physics. Having one teammate get struck by one of these almost guarantees that a second Guardian, if not all 3, are going to fall. If that wasn't bad enough, these things are glitched out and can end up teleporting randomly. There's also a shit ton of moths that are going to attack you, dealing out an insane amount of arc damage. There's exploding screeps and cursed thrall scattered throughout this strike that can sneak up on you and put a quick end to your attempt. With all this in mind, completing the Lightblade will not be a quick and simple process for anyone. So today we're breaking down this Grandmaster in its entirety and going over all of the best subclass choices, loadouts, the best tactics to get through each section, and all of the currently functioning cheeses and exploits to make each of the Lightblade's encounters as easy as possible for you and your team. The Lightblade includes barrier champions and unstoppable, but there's only going to be 3 to 4 unstoppables, whereas barrier champions are much more common, which should be something you take into account for weapon loadouts. Wizards will have solar shields, and several knights will have arc shields. Acolytes will throw solar grenades, but everything else your enemy hits you with is going to be either void or arc. Your enemies will receive an increase in arc damage, which is a huge contributing factor in how harmful the moths and the boss can be. You will receive an increase towards void and arc damage this week, and grenade launchers get overcharged. When it comes to subclass choices, many are going to be quick to jump to arc, which isn't necessarily a bad idea, since arc gets a bonus this week, and there's so many great seasonal artifact mods that significantly improve a lot of arc builds. But most arc builds are set up for close combat situations, which is not really what you want to be doing in the Lightblade. Warlocks will find the most success utilizing a stasis or strand build. Being able to freeze or suspend your enemies will be far more valuable towards your team's success than a Well of Radiance would be. To the same token, hunters will want to stick with either stasis, strand, or an invisibility spec void build. Both Gerfalcons and Omnioculus can provide you with several advantages that can even allow you to slip right by some of the enemies throughout this strike. A Titan Bubble can be a great asset to shield your team from the onslaught of attacks that you'll be facing off against, but Titans can also have a lot of success with a strand build. As far as weapons go, the Wishender continues to be a great choice for kinetic, even more so than the Arbalist, since you won't have to worry about ammo economy. Revision Zero or Malfeasance can make for equally effective choices, and if running a strand build, I would recommend the Quicksilver Storm, since its grenade launcher mode will reap the benefits of being overcharged. The Wither Horde, the Centrifuge, Two-Tailed Fox, or Leviathan's Breath are some additional standout exotics. This should work out pretty well this week. Void and Arc legendary weapons will be your best bet for energy and heavy slots, since these energies get a bonus in damage. The Targeted Redaction, Nation of the Beasts, or the Aikilos Hand Cannon can all be great against the Unstoppables. With loadouts out of the way, let's start talking about how to take down this Grandmaster. When you first load in, you'll be outside of Oryx's temple, with the Lightblade guarding the door, and several rank and file enemies stuck between you. There's 2 barrier champions down here as well. I find it best to unload on the boss right away to get him to teleport out of the area. This will open the doors into the temple, which you could then in turn send an invisible hunter through to sneak by all these enemies, causing them to despawn once reaching the next area. This will send away the barriers and prevent you from gaining those 2 revives. But this also saves you a few minutes, prevents you from having an untimely death, and it does not take away your ability to receive platinum at the end. And now the fun starts. This next area will include 3 barrier champions, several big beefy knights, and 3 total Lucent Hive Titans. You've been warned already about the suppression grenades and the shield attacks, so it's going to be imperative for you to pay attention at all times to the whereabouts of these Lucent Hive. You need to be ready to dodge and avoid incoming grenades and incoming ricocheting shields. I find it best to hunker down in the front of this room so you can have this back hallway to fall back to. This way, all the enemies will stay in front of you and you'll be more aware of incoming attacks. You'll need to be sure you keep some distance between you and your teammates. Stay close, but not too close. When suppression grenades and frisbees start beaming at you, it's going to be less detrimental to your team to have 1 guardian down than it is to have 2. Your focus should always go straight to the Lucent Hive. There's 3 that will spawn in this first room, and the last thing that you want to do is to have to deal with 2 or even 3 of these at the same time. And for the love of God, whatever you do not forget to finish their ghosts when they die. This will be an ideal job for invisible hunters or a thundering crash titan. The best thing to do in this room is to just play passively and stay as far back as possible. Being too aggressive puts you at too great of a risk of getting separated from your team and flanked by the many enemies that are in this encounter. After you've cleared this first area, you'll transition to the boat sequence. There is an out of bounds glitch that you can access before leaving this first room that can allow you to skip a small portion of this strike, but it's just not worth it in Grandmaster. The boat sequence is split into 3 separate phases. Once it begins, you'll float down a corridor with enemies on your left and right and a big shrieker up ahead. Jumping off of the boat and getting to one of the side ledges will be the safest way to move through this area. But if you stay on the boat, you'll need to quickly take out all of the enemies or go invisible to avoid them. When the boat stops, you'll have to defeat the 2 Lucent Hive that are on the top left and right sides of this room. Be sure that you're not all 3 standing together at any point, just in case the Titan's frisbees come darting at you. Once you've defeated the Lucent Hive and dunked the 2 relics, the boat sequence will progress to a new area that has wizards and acolytes on bridges, with 3 shriekers spread out between the bridgeways. If you have an invisible hunter that can keep your team invisible, you can ride the boat all the way through without engaging with a single enemy. But if you don't have this luxury, you will want to jump off of the boat at the earliest opportunity. Skirt along the edge of the walls and clear through the enemies, 1 section at a time, until you get to the portal at the end. Once you've gone through the portal, you'll catch up with the boat at its final sequence. This is where the boat gets overtaken with thrall. There are 3 separate ledges that you can use to jump to avoid getting smacked by these thrall. Once all the thrall are defeated, the boat ride will continue to its final destination. This transitions you into the totems field, which can get very scary very quick. This area is filled with exploding screeps that continuously spawn until you reach the end. Thunder crashing titans or Dawnblade warlocks can skip through a majority, if not all, of this maze by jumping off and heading straight towards the far left. Hunters should be able to keep your team invisible for a good portion of the walkthrough if you try to clear each totem. But for the safest way to get through here, I suggest to hug the far right wall, shoot down moths that are ahead of you, and keep a mindful eye on newly spawned screeps that can spawn in behind you. This is an area where stasis and strand effects can become very beneficial. Once you've made it through the totems area, you'll have a group of enemies, moths, and an unstoppable to take down in this large open cave area. And once they've been cleared out, you'll be looking down onto an intense battle between Hive and Scorn. There's usually 1 Hive unstoppable and 1 Scorn unstoppable, but sometimes you will have 2 Scorn unstoppables that spawn in instead. Just be sure to get shots on any unstoppables before they kill each other. It's best to stay at the opening of the cave area so you can avoid all of the conflict down below, and stay out of aggro range from the shriekers. There will be a few screebs that jump up here, so just be ready for those. Once everything down below is cleared out, you can move down and use the broken bridge pieces as cover as you take down the shriekers. And now for the final stretch of the Lightblade Grandmaster, the boss encounter. Things can get very chaotic very quick while in this arena. Before the encounter even begins, you need to designate 1 teammate to be on boss duty, while the other 2 teammates are going to be handling champions and ads. This is going to make things a lot smoother, as you can have one Guardian maintaining the boss's aggro and using a very effective exploit against the boss that forces him into a loop of continuously jumping from the center platform to one of the adjacent ledges. While this Guardian is handling the boss, the other 2 Guardians will need to clear out the cursed thrall that are on the bottom floor and all the other rank and file ads that spawn in at this beginning phase. The boss has 2 health gates, and once his first has been reached, he will return to the center platform, and 2 extra large knights and a Lucent Hive will spawn in. The Lucent Hive needs to be priority, because once the 2 knights have been defeated, the boss will leave the center platform and go back to chasing you around. Once the 2 knights and Lucent Hive are down, the Guardian on boss duty will need to go back to work, but this is where things can quickly get out of hand, because not long after the boss re-engages with you, there will be 2 separate groups of enemies that spawn in on the 2nd floor that include 2 barrier champions. Because of this, it will be best for the other 2 Guardians to spread out along this 2nd floor. Save heavy and supers for these champions, clear them out quickly, and you can return to just focusing on the boss. Once the boss reaches his next health gate, things are going to cycle back through a rotation of a Lucent Hive with 2 knights, followed by the wave of champions. It's going to be crucial to have heavy and or supers ready to take these groups down as they spawn in, so be sure to communicate with your team so that you can make time to regain supers in between each phase. After the 2nd set of barrier champions have been cleared out, all that will be left will be a few lingering thrall and an enraged hatless boss, the home stretch. Even though the boss will be in a state of constant charging at this point, the Guardian that's handling boss duty will still be able to continue to get the boss stuck into the platform jumping loop. The most important thing to do will be to not leave yourself too exposed to the splash damage. So make sure you're not standing right on the edge of any of the platforms when you're jumping back and forth. And while you're jumping, you need to be sure you are damaging the boss so that his aggro doesn't shift towards one of the other teammates. While it can certainly feel like a daunting task to complete the Lightblade on Grandmaster, it is definitely something that all of you can achieve. You just need to be alert and aware of your surroundings at all times and be in a constant state of communication with your teammates. And with that being said, I wish you all the best of luck throughout this week. Let me know how your Grandmaster runs are going, what roles of the Wendigo you've gotten, and what loadouts you decided to use. If you've got any additional tips for your fellow Guardians or questions about the Lightblade, be sure to leave those in the comments down below. And thank you for checking out today's video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.